Okay, so hey, welcome to BroPartisan Hacks. This is episode 8. We've done eight of these things. I guess that means we've been doing this for 2 months straight.
Yeah.
I almost canceled on you today. My ear is kind of in pain, and I thought about not doing it. So again, we're here, against all odds. So,
We're working through it, man. We just
putting out the content, being content creators. So this week there's been a shit ton of things that have happened that we have to talk about. The first thing, because that's first and foremost on our minds because of where we live. We live here in Texas, and Texas governor is removing the mask mandate on Wednesday. So Wednesday the 10th, I believe. Is that right?
I thought it was the
Yeah,
9th,
today's
but
the 7th, so it's the 10th. Wednesday the 10th, he's removing the mask mandate. So, what are your thoughts? Let's just start there.
Honestly, like I don't really know what the right answer is. And the thing is that I also don't believe that like the scientists really know what the right answer is, and so the erring on the side of caution versus the taking the risk and opening it all up, like the only thing I could say for sure is like it was a bold political move cast off by Abbott. Now, I think part of it was also the shaming from Mr. DeSantis that happened during CPAC, where that was like his big shtick, like, oh, come to Florida, we're doing fine. And there's a lot to be said for the fact that the numbers from Florida and the numbers from New York are almost exactly the same. And in fact, New York had more deaths and they locked down harder than definitely than Florida.
Like percentage-wise or number-wise?
I think it's both.
It can't be both. There's 20 million more people in New York than there are in Florida.
Yeah.
Like, it can't be both.
But New York accounts for like
it can be numbers-wise or it can be percentage-wise.
As far as like gross numbers, I think New York doesn't that account for like almost 30% of all the cases in the states? Of like all cases?
I don't know.
Thinking of something
Google
different. In any case, from a principled matter, I don't care about enough about the numbers to look that up and stand by it. The fact is that like Florida was doing fine, and so like I'm personally okay with it. And at work they basically already told us like, hey, they're removing the mask mandates, but we're still gonna make you wear the masks. And I think there's a lot of places around here that are gonna do that anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what has been going on.
And I'm okay with that. Like, take away the government mandate and let businesses and people make a choice.
Yeah. So I think in Florida and the same in Texas, we have a lot of space. And so the majority of New York State lives in New York City.
Yeah.
Right? And so you've been to the Northeast. You know how everything like is way more compact.
Yeah, you drive like 30 minutes and you're in a whole other major city. It's weird.
Yeah, it's
weird.
It's like
you
a
don't
lot
have to
of people.
drive 2.5 hours to get anywhere. What is this?
A lot of people from here don't really like that haven't been there. Like it is. They are jam packed in. The houses are really close together. Like it's not the wide open spaces that we have here. Like, and for most of the West and Midwest and further that way.
Yeah, I mean, like the entirety of the Northeast is basically like the entire stretch between Dallas and Fort Worth. Like there's all the major towns in between it and everything else, and Arlington, and you got Plano.
Right.
Like that's the whole Northwest. Just looks like that.
Right. Northeast.
Northeast. I said northwest. Yeah, no, northeast. Yeah.
So anyway, you sent me this tweet from Michael Mellis, who said that they're not scared that you're not wearing a mask, or else they distance themselves. They're scared that you're being disobedient. So I do think that people like him literally only ever think about themselves, how they feel, how things affect them personally. They don't actually or can't process how their actions could affect anyone else because they lack what is widely known as empathy. And in most hardcore right-wing Republicans, that's a trait that I find lacking generally, is empathy. So my intention is to see people on the street walking around without a mask.
You're turning into a robot. Hold on, slow down 1 sec. Let the internet catch up.
Stupid internet.
Yeah, I know. Sorry about his picture too. We're again webcamming and all this stuff. So yes, you were saying Republicans don't have empathy.
My intention is when I see people walking down the street without a mask, I'm going to cross the street and walk on the other sidewalk, like how racists do to black people, and just avoid them altogether. Just move. I just want to be an asshole.
Yeah, no, I gathered that. There's a few things here that's like, man, I really want to like unpack a few of these, and it's like one has to do with empathy, and I find it interesting. Well, it doesn't really tie into this subject. It's just an interesting observation that your empathy only ever goes in one direction. And you feel a certain way about things, and so you're empathetic towards a certain point of view and never the other. And I could say this for several examples. So, I mean, people who... You're empathetic towards people who, have health, don't have the health care that you think they should have. But you have no empathy for me, who wants to hang on to more of my tax dollars and the money I work to make. You're empathetic towards people who fill this narrative or side with the narrative of keeping the mask on, and this is actually the answer that needs to happen to keep everybody safe, versus people who want to like resume a normal existence and like go out and live their lives. So are they not deserving of any empathy whatsoever?
Okay, so
these people who disagree with you.
Let's talk about that. You want to hang on to more of your tax dollars.
As an example, yes.
You got a nice house. You got 2 cars. You got money in the bank that you can sit on.
Yeah, I worked my ass off for it.
You got health insurance. Yeah. So you're saying that people that can't afford those things don't work their asses off?
I didn't say that. I said I worked my ass off for my things.
I understand.
And what I'm saying is, you don't have a right to send men with guns to take it.
Who's sending men with guns to take it?
What taxes are. That's all taxes. All taxes are men with guns.
Right.
It's enforced by men with guns.
Right, so you can leave. That's what y'all love to tell liberals when they don't like things. So if you don't like taxes and you don't like living in a society where we all have things together, then leave.
It's
There's
the idea
an island that you can go live on,
your
and you can go and be by yourself.
They have to be mandatory. Your ideas are so good they have to be mandatory.
Every single other country in the United States, or not in the United States, in the world, I'm sorry, every other developed country in the world has universal fucking healthcare. Everyone that's developed, that you would want to go live, has universal healthcare. So yeah, pay more in taxes. I will gladly also pay more in taxes. Happily. I will happily pay 50 cents more for a fucking Big Mac so that I can know that that guy that's selling me said Big Mac, this idiot, whoever it is, selling me a Big Mac, can have a roof over their head.
Mm-hmm. Now, in talking about that, what do you think of this article I sent you here? Do you remember this one? The CNN article with the it's too soon, small business owners react to dropping the mask mandate. Did you read through this one?
Let's see. Let me pull it up.
Hey, your camera cleared up, so that's good.
Hey, maybe our internet is waking up with us.
Yeah, maybe it's 9 o'clock. The internet just woke up finally.
So, trash and treasures. Oh yeah, I read through this.
So you read through this, and so I what did you glean from this? Because I was gonna talk about this one in specificity.
So, and this is, I think we got into this earlier this week, and the reality is, most businesses are going to do this. Most businesses want to protect their workers. They want to protect themselves. They're going to make their business be mask mandatory. Mm-hmm. Just like our, most school districts are going to continue the mask mandate through the year. Now, what happens next year? Who knows? I know that there are a couple of private schools that have ended their VLA altogether, or Virtual Learning Academy, and they're face-to-face only. But they also have more space and less students. Mm-hmm. This is in the Metroplex. Obviously, if you're a smaller district, and I mean with less students, you probably can get away with it. But like with 3,000 kids, our campus isn't that big. Mm-hmm. We're gonna continue on with the mask mandate.
I don't know if it's just a matter of. I think it's mostly a matter of who they interviewed for this article and the framing that they're taking with this whole article, because this whole article makes the people that they interviewed sound like cowards to me. And I say that basically on the statement right here. This person, this chef or whoever this is, who's basically like, I relied on the government to basically
back her up
on this conviction that she has that this is the right thing to do. And so the idea that it's like, well, the government says you have to make those decisions for yourself now, but now she doesn't like that. Well, because she can't just tell somebody, my store, get out. This is our rule at my store, versus like, oh, well, the government said so you need to do it.
I think you're wrong there, because it is her store and she is allowed to do that. But people are going to be like, well, the government said we don't have to. Well, here in Texas, you don't have to. And so now she doesn't have the backing up.
Now you're trespassing. Get out. Have a little bit of conviction. Like, I'm sorry. No, like this whole article is written to frame them as cowards.
Right,
it's an emotional pull.
That's real easy. It's so easy to just be like, great, get out.
Yeah, it is.
Like, no.
I've seen it all the time. There's thousands of videos out there where there's people walk into the stores with no mask on and like, great, get out. It is so easy, and people love to do it.
They just
people
turn
love
around and
to
walk
tell
out,
other
huh?
people
they
what
just turn
to
around
do.
And walk out, huh?
People
Just turn
love
around
to
and
tell
walk
other
out?
people what to do.
So those people just turn around and walk out, huh? They
Do
just
they?
walk out with nothing.
Oh, I said it's easy to tell them. That's what you said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then I said, you're trespassing. Now you call the cops. And now you're trespassing, and the cops got to deal with you.
Right. So it's essentially the same thing.
It's the
That's what
same
you're saying?
thing. Nothing's changed. But now you're being forced to make a choice on whether you're going to change with it or stay the same. And you're upset about that.
I mean,
Cowards.
if you're a small business owner, I mean, I understand. But if you're like this HEB, corporate makes those decisions.
Yeah.
Just like Kroger, corporate makes those decisions. Kroger's
But
going to keep
here
the
it
mask
says
on.
that
They've already announced.
HEB is going to do whatever the local enforcement is.
Oh, yeah, Kroger said about that. That's what the right grocery stores are.
Kroger is corporate. They're a publicly traded company. HEB is not.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. Trust me, I've looked at trying to buy their stock because I like it more than Kroger. You can't. I don't find it.
I mean, that's why we can't get one up here. You can't get a HEB north of like Waco. It's bullshit.
I got a nice one down here. It's cool.
Boop, 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 boop. And every time they're like, "Hey, we might get an HEB," it's never an HEB.
No, you get like an Allsups or something. A gas station. What am I at? Okay. So anyway, that's how I feel about this article. I think it's more of the framing of the author of this article than it is
So I see what you're saying, though. She says it right here. It says forcing businesses to take a stand, either enforce a rule that is no longer required by the state or allow people to skip the mask means they may alienate customers.
Yeah.
At a time they desperately need the business. We're already losing money. We just want a little bit of support as a small business. So she's saying that if they say no, get out, they may lose that business when they need the business. I'm sorry. She owns 2 Roots Chicken Shack. Yeah, she's not hurting. I don't give a shit. I'm sorry.
Like I said, I think it's mostly how the authors have decided to frame this article. But to me, it just makes all these people sound like cowards. I mean, and they're not cowards of like being scared of the pandemic. I'm saying cowards as like
they don't want to stand up for themselves.
Stand up for yourself and do if this is the right answer, if this is what you believe, then take a stand and do the right thing.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I agree with that. They should. And they should be willing to tell people to go fuck themselves.
Yeah. But this whole thing, like I said, this whole framing here, I hated it. The other thing I was going to say is you mentioned the other day about cases dropping because of the freeze in Texas. And I found this article the other day talking about it's actually been dropping since early January, so before the freeze. And the scientists here, according to this article, and this guy at University of Florida says they can't exactly tell you why. He's saying we don't think we've reached herd immunity, but it's possible that the subset of the population that already goes out to the bars has, because they're the people who've been going out and getting infected, I guess. Maybe it's the combination of social distancing while some people are still following it. But basically it's that they don't know, and they don't attribute it to, at least in Texas, the freeze necessarily. Now, I'm not taking away from your anecdotal of you had kids once a week versus like none at all when everybody was locked in their houses.
Speaking of cases, let me tell you this story because this really pissed me off. So it's soccer season here, and because of the freeze and because of like COVID and all this stuff, they're playing like 7 games in 12 days. Okay, so they're just cramming them in, right?
Soccer? Yeah.
So one of the richer schools in our district, more wealthy schools in our district, did this. So they were playing in a game against us. They, one, claimed a playoff spot, like qualified for a playoff spot, nothing else bad can happen.
Right.
And then called the next morning to say, hey, we had a kid test positive this morning. Do what you want with that. If they tested positive the next morning, that means that they had already been taking a test.
Yup.
So either the kid should be in trouble or the coach should be in trouble. Because if you come in and you play your kid to make sure that you claim your spot, you get your little playoff spot, and then you can sit in quarantine for the next 2 weeks and nothing bad happens. I think that's really shitty.
So
now I can't
hold
prove
on.
that this is what they did on purpose. So they claim their playoff spot. There's like 3 games left. Now they can forfeit the rest of those games, and they'll still be in the playoffs. So they quarantine, they forfeit those games to get, to get to the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they jeopardize our chances because they played a kid that had been tested already, because those results come out
after 2 or 3 days later after you've taken the test. Yeah, even the fast test. Wow. My wife had to have a test done, and so I had to quarantine home until the results came back. Like, I'd call work and be like, hey, look, I feel fine, but my wife doesn't, so she went and got tested, and they're like, okay, we'll quarantine at home and then call us and tell us what happened. And so I'm working from home. And
the internet didn't keep up with us. You.
Oh yeah, that's me. I'm still blaming you. Your picture. But my picture looks great. Having the recording going. So anyway, I don't know where I cut off, but the work had me quarantined at home, and I'm working from home and doing my thing, and I think 3 days later she got tested on like a Wednesday, it was one of my Fridays off, and so we didn't get the results back until like next Wednesday, where I could go back to work.
Yeah, that's how most of these work. And so that player had already been tested. Even if you do the fast test, it's still like takes a minute.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So they should have been quarantined. It's bullshit. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Do you think that going into our segue from the masks and the COVID numbers, do you want to segue into what we had discussed as the main topic for today, as like what are rights?
Sure.
What is a right in your definition?
All right. So, from my perspective, I work from a positive rights perspective. A framework where there's a positive duty, or somebody has, is imposed on us to sustain the welfare of those in need. Just in the framework of health, okay? It's a necessary tool for the attainment of health and positive rights perspective, and it's something that I think should be provided to everyone, whether or not they can participate meaningfully in the free market system. I do believe that is the duty of the government to participate in ensuring the conditions that mediate basic human rights regardless of the lottery of birth. Therefore, I think the government has the right to impose taxes that will help those for whom the free market system imposes undue burden.
Can you say that duty? It's the duty of the government to what? I want to make sure I get this right in my notes. You're touching on like major points you have written down. I want to make sure I come back to them. So it's the duty of the government to protect.
Where did I say it? Duty of the? It's the duty of the government to ensure the conditions that mediate basic human rights are attainable, regardless of the lottery of birth.
One more time. I'm sorry. I'm gonna make sure. It's kind of a mouthful.
Basically, I think the government has the right to impose taxes that those whom free market imposes undue burden. Healthcare is a tool to attain the basic human right of health, and it is the duty of the people to ensure access to it. So, I mean, I think that we all have basic entitlements, clean water, garbage collection, we have roads, we have a fire department. I think all of those are rights as citizens to have access to those things.
I just noted that in hearing your list of things that the government's in, we have rights to. I didn't hear like police in there.
I mean, I was just giving you a list. I could do the whole list.
I wasn't sure if that was intentionally left out because you put firefighters and ambulance.
I left out education as well. So
okay, yeah,
so you know what I mean, like.
It was just a short, like, etc. at all of these things.
Yeah.
It wasn't intentional. Okay. It stood out to me as someone who always bitches about the police, from you.
Yeah. They're militaristic, brutal assholes.
Hey, I'm not going to argue that. Okay. And so from your basic entitlements, you think that all of these things are also rights?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I am a what impacts one of us impacts all of us type of person. If the most vulnerable of our society is not cared for, then we as a society have failed.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel about it.
It's an interesting and very altruistic view of the world. I commend you for that. Yeah, more. I'm sorry. I don't want to.
No, go ahead. I mean, I have things that from the other side of that that I have issues with.
I think
the negative rights framework.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to talk about a little bit. And the reason, okay, so for anyone who doesn't know the difference between positive rights and negative rights, I think we talked about you a few weeks back. You mentioned it was like a difference of like freedom to or freedom from something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in the framework of a negative rights, and in the framework of what I see as like the Constitution and what rights we are guaranteed currently, it's a different understanding than what the rights my brother's talking about. And so the right of freedom of speech is enshrined in the Constitution, not in such a way that like saying like because of this document you have freedom of speech, but that people inherently are free to speak and you are protected from government response for enacting your freedom. And it's a freedom from oppression, I guess, in that case you could say. I hate using that word, but like, and it gets back to like do you believe in the law of this and like a strict interpretation of the law? And this is where a lot of the conversations come into play. I'm sorry, my mind's going in 100 different directions, but like, this is where the idea comes into play that like, that I have a problem with, where you and certain people on the left, not you specifically, because I know you hate private businesses anyway, but where people are okay with like a business, or in some cases a monopoly, like violating someone's rights, and they say, well, it's not the government doing it, so it's okay. Like, I still have a problem with that. But that's because I believe in the principle of like freedom of speech versus like what is just written in the law to say like, hey, if only the government steps on you, like then it's only a problem then. Like I think it's a problem no matter what.
So you think that everybody should be able to say whatever they want without consequence?
I think,
regardless of who
consequences are inevitable. Consequences are inevitable. Like, you being a jerk isn't going to stop someone from punching you like hitting you in the face, like, right? Like, if you say something to somebody, they can hit you in the face, and they might go to jail for that. They might suffer the consequences of that action. But so will you.
You can't assault people,
right? You can't assault people.
So will you.
Yeah, like,
it's true.
I mean, like, that's just it's a factor of living in a civilized society, in a polite society, right? We don't have enough of that right now, but the idea also that like I don't think that people should be banned for non-criminal activity on social media platforms. You are allowed in this country to have hateful and awful opinions about people.
So
like that is allowed.
I mean, this kind of is jumping off topic.
It's not, but it is.
You're kind of jumping off topic because I kind of wanted to get into. I wanted to get into some of the social media stuff because I have some thoughts on that.
Okay. Can I try to jump back in?
But going back to negative rights framing. Basically, it is the issue that I take with negative framing and how you can't inhibit somebody else's rights. That's what negative rights mean. To break it down is you can't inhibit anybody else's activity, right? So the issue that I take with that outlook is it looks at the deserving and the undeserving. So a person who takes responsibility for themselves, work is key. Work is the key that opens the door to healthcare, etc., and a wonderful life. Earning money, saving for health, choosing employment and health coverage, what a hardworking, self-reliant individual should do in their productive working years to ensure access to the privilege of health care for themselves and their children. So the issue that I take is I think all lives have equal value, and that health care is a necessity for a prosperous society. The issue that I also take, and this is one that fucking drives me crazy, and I want to talk about the word access. Okay? Access to healthcare or access to whatever is absolute weasel wording fucking propaganda. Okay? Right now, everybody in America has access to healthcare. Everyone. If you have the means to get healthcare, so what access means, you have the means, you have the ability to go get it. If you don't have the means, right, you don't have the money, you have the ability to go get the means to access healthcare. It's a weasel word that fucking neoliberal shitholes use to pretend that they're on board. And watch how some of these fucking Democrats use the word access. Like it is absolutely a way to get out of anything that actually would help people. when you remove the burden, we're trying to figure out how you're going to pay hospital bills,
Hold on.
doctor bills, etc.
Go back to when you remove the burden.
When you remove the burden of trying to figure out how to pay your hospital bill, how to pay your doctor bill, you're free to pursue dreams. That makes you more free. You're free that you won't be tied down to a dead-end job because you're afraid that you're going to lose your health care. I feel the same way about education. Free college, free universal health care are benefits, net benefits to society as a whole. Mm-hmm. Okay? It creates more entrepreneurship. It creates more ability, upward mobility, ability to move, ability to not work in a shit job, ability to go and maybe write Harry Potter. Because your girl, J.K. Rowling, spent, a year and a half on living off of her NHS and welfare or whatever, and wrote like the first 2-3 books. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what those safety nets do for us. Like, that's what those things could possibly do. But I think you ruin a lot of creativity. Am I gone again?
You ruin a lot of what?
You ruin creativity. You take away creativity. There are probably really, really smart people that are working in 9-to-5 jobs, creative people, geniuses that are working 9-to-5 jobs because they either have to pay down their college debt, they've got medical bills, they've got the medical insurance that they're scared of losing because they got a sick kid. And I think that is damaging to the country as a whole. End of rant.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think, we've had this conversation many, many times, and I don't think you can make I don't think you can make anything a right, like an inalienable right. Now, we've talked about the differences between inalienable rights and what you have determined as a human right, or what the UN has determined as a human right, are two very different things, right? And we always use the term rights. And I feel like it's a little bit misleading and disingenuous to people who, when put in the context of what the inalienable rights were determined, and again, this is, for the most part, what's in the Constitution. It's the original John Locke treatises on government and, kind of, I forget what the other book that he wrote was. It was like What Makes a Man, or what rights the man have, or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, it was his writings that basically said, like, these are the rights enshrined by your creator, yada, 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 yada. No one can take these from you. You inherently have these things. And that's what makes them inalienable. And then what you're talking about is what people should have, what things we should basically have the government to provide for these people. And while you could say
but I think
entitlements or whatever else, I don't think rights is the correct word for those things. And I think the UN got it wrong when they said these UN rights, because again, what you're talking about takes the effort of someone else. And I don't think you can have an individual right to something that takes effort from someone else.
So here's the thing. We accept in this country that everybody should have an education, right? We accept that. Everybody should have K through 12 education. Now, there are people that probably disagree and people that think that, I can afford to educate my kids, fuck everybody else. But in order to have a democratic society, right, in order to have freedom, in order to be free, people have to have an education. Part of freedom, part of what gives us those inalienable rights is education. And education gives you the ability to be a self-determinate adult. Thomas Jefferson, he wrote that.
And in Thomas Jefferson's day, the schools, such as they were in the small towns and western whatever, some little colony towns, they went from what, first grade to eighth grade, maybe, yeah, maybe. And then that didn't change until I believe Eisenhower, where it was K through 12, right?
Right, and that was during when they had.
Was Eisenhower was post World War II, right?
Right, they had massive taxes during that time, and during that time is when they really invested in the infrastructure. Think about when Ike was president, and think about the buildings that you see all around. How many public buildings, gorgeous public buildings that we invested into during that time, and how they're crumbling down now.
Well, I'm going to try to draw this into modern times, so that from essentially the 1700s, right, to 1950 something, was Ike president? Yeah, it was after World War II. You basically had
Lost you again.
Well, it's basically from hello. From the 1700s into 1950s, you basically had this K through 8, right? And then you had secondary school, which very few people would go on to do, which was your 9 through 12. And then in the 1950s, they made it where everyone was K through 12, and then they still had the universities afterwards. And so, I don't know, I guess my question as far as like specifically on education, what has changed in the landscape of education to make it so that after 13 years of education, a person is not qualified to go out and get a job?
So it's not that they're not qualified to go out and get a job. It's that the jobs in America require higher education, whether it's trade school, whether it's
well, it didn't used to for trade
tech school, whether it's just university. Okay, so let me kind of go to this. I dropped out of college when I was 19, right? Mm-hmm. Started selling cars, was making a lot of money, and I decided to not go back. Got married, had kids, and then I woke up one day and I was like, I fucking hate this life. I hate selling cars. I hate being in sales. I hate people. Like I hate working retail. So I don't hate people. I'm just,
But you did at the time. You hated people that you sold cars to, and you hated the people that you worked with.
Well, it's just such a soul-sucking. I think that was my biggest issue. That business, you have to be pretty soulless to do it, because you've got to take people for everything. Like knowing they can't afford that in order to feed my family, I've got to make them think they can afford that. And I don't know. Anyway, when I started looking for jobs that were comparable in pay or jobs that I thought I could do, almost every single one required a degree. Any degree. It didn't matter what degree it was. They just wanted a college degree. In order to make the kind of money that I was used to making, or make the kind of money I wanted to make. So, I bounced around from a couple different jobs, and really the only thing that I was qualified for at 26, 27 years old was sales. That was the only job that I could get, and the only thing that I could get into was entry level, right? So you're at the bottom of the barrel, entry level sales. When most of those jobs are not salaried, they're commissioned. So it's a tough world. Excuse me. So I was kind of bouncing around in what I wanted to do. And then I, realized that what I originally wanted to do before I graduated high school was be a teacher and a coach. When I was in high school, that was kind of what I had intended to do. And then I got hurt and couldn't play anymore. And so I was just like, I got away from sports altogether. And then I realized that really that's my passion is kids, sports, that kind of thing. And and so I had to go back to school. Get a degree, go to college. And so I changed careers officially at 27, but didn't start till I was 31. So now I'm already behind in my field, because most guys are 31, 32 when they start reaching for the higher levels, offensive coordinators, head coaches, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm a little bit behind the curve on that kind of stuff. I started out in sub-varsity. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. My point is, that I had to go back to school and have a degree. Mm-hmm. It was in order to prosper realistically. Mm-hmm. Now, there are people that get into skilled labor jobs that they too have to have some tertiary schooling. God damn it.
What? You look good.
You there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hello?
I didn't say anything. You keep
my
talking.
Camera
I'm
froze
getting
up.
Everything.
Okay.
It's been fine for me.
So they have to have some sort of tertiary schooling. So whether it's trade school, whether it's whatever, in order to make it in this country, in order to prosper and not be reliant on 720 fucking 5, mm-hmm. you have to have some extra schooling. So in order to be lifted up out of poverty, in order to grow and to do the things that everybody says you can do, you need tertiary education.
So you're saying you had a job, you didn't like where you were at, you bettered yourself, and you got a different job?
Right. I paid for that shit too.
Yeah, you fucking worked your ass off. I know you did.
Yeah.
Thanks for making my argument for me.
It costs a lot of fucking money to do it.
It does.
That's my point.
It's hard.
That's my point, though. That's my point. Going to school is hard.
Yeah.
Right? It's and working 2 full-time jobs at the same time.
It's hard.
But I spent a shit ton of money doing it. Mm-hmm. And my point is that should be free. Going to school should be free.
I mean, I think all that ties back into the $15 an hour argument and everything else. And you are the perfect case example of you worked hard, you did something else, like you made a decision, you went for it, and now you're in a better place. It's the perfect case example of
very in debt to do it.
And now you have you bought a great big house.
So that sounds cool.
It is. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I had a lot of help.
Yeah,
I had a lot of help, and I'm very lucky to have had that help from parents, from friends, from neighbors, because I still had 2 kids at the same time. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I had a lot of help. There are people that don't have that kind of help. Mm-hmm. And so it's really easy to say, oh, well, you did it. It's survivor's bias. Well, I was able to get this. Why can't you? Because everybody's situation is different. Mm-hmm. Everybody's situation is different. And but income has increased 300 goddamn % for the top 1%, for the owner class, for the bourgeoisie. Mm-hmm. Their income has increased with inflation. nobody else's has.
Mm-hmm.
Starting teacher salary is average $40,000 a year. You know how much a college education costs with room and board and everything for 4 years? About $40,000.
Yeah. Public schools.
That's public school.
Eight
4 years to public school. Yeah.
It's between 32 and 40. Yeah.
You're about $40,000 into it. Yeah. Just to get through school.
I know that at my school, I don't know where you went, but where I went, it was about half of that.
No, I'm talking about everything, not just tuition. I'm talking about everything. I'm talking about books, cost of living, etc.
Yeah, it was about half of that. But I didn't have to live
No,
on
there's
campus,
no
so there
way.
you go.
That's what I'm saying. There's no way it was half of that. You lived at home.
To finish, yeah. So. Of course, I was dumb and decided, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do a private school first. And then that shit was about twice as much as the $8,000 a semester. So yeah, I left that place.
Yeah, I mean, it is yes, because now, I mean, there are lots of things that are wrong with the way college education works in this country. I think there are, horrendous things. One of the things, though, that I was thinking about when I think about education and that kind of thing, Jesus Christ, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, my picture is dead. So one of the things that I was thinking about was, I went to Paris like 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
No, God damn, that's been 10 years. I'm old. Anyway, so I went to Paris, and we went and visited this fashion school. Now, the fashion school in France was a private school. Do you know how much it cost for all 3 years of private school in Paris, France?
I don't know why I would know. Why do you think I might know that?
Take a guess as how much you think it would be. It's private, so it's not state funded. It's not free, because college in France is free. What do you think?
It's still France. They're in euros. I guess the euro is trading 1-to-1 with the U.S. dollar right now, so I can think of it in terms of that. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah. In France for 3 years, 3-year program. I don't know, $9,000.
It's $3,000. It was $3,000. I asked because I was like, this is a private school. I said,
how hard is it to get into?
Get state funding, huh?
How hard is it to get into?
Shit, that was it was a really prestigious fashion design school. It was really hard.
So that's a lot of thing that the European schools and universities do, is that starting in the 8th grade, they begin making everyone take tests. And this is especially true in France. I do know this much about France, is that in the 8th grade, every student is given a test, and then how they do on that test determines essentially their career path for the rest of their life. And there's no real way to break out of that until you test again in I think the 11th grade or 10th grade or 11th grade. There's 2 tests that are given in French schools, and the first one's in 8th grade, the second one's either in 10th or 11th grade, and it determines whether or not you are able and even eligible to go on to secondary or tertiary education, if you want to call that, to a college, right? And so their ability to go to college as a student in France is much more reduced because you're competing with everyone in the entire nation. And so how Texas has the top 10% can get automatic acceptance to any Texas public school. Mm-hmm. They have that, but basically for the whole country, and it's only acceptance, right? And so while there's a lot of those private schools and government funding, the actual number of students that they're servicing is far, far lower than a school here.
Interesting.
And it's the same way in France, it's the same way in Germany, and I think it's the same way in England. I know it's the same way in Japan and South Korea as well.
It's interesting. I know that if you want to go to school, you can figure out how to go to school. Now, you may have to go to junior college here,
mm-hmm.
Which is a thing that a lot of stuff don't have that here.
Yeah.
And our universities are huge compared to those, especially the state schools.
Oh yeah.
You know, like
You
our
got 40,000 undergrads
major,
in like UT or something like that.
right? Our Division I schools where they have these huge stadiums and things like that are like literally unfathomable to Europeans. And those things cost a lot of money. Man, speaking of our universities and University of Texas, I went down a Twitter thread the other day about the Eyes of Texas and that
like
whole
the
controversy. Song? Yeah, you didn't know there's a controversy over this?
No.
So the controversy is to the tune of "Working on a Railroad," which is a slave song, and there's a lot of like racist history that goes along with that song, I think. Needless to say, there's the athletes were not going out to sing the song, and so there's a lot of alumni that are threatening to pull their financial backing if they change the song. There are alumni that are threatening to pull their financial backing if the football players don't go out and sing. So if the coach doesn't make them sing the song, they're going to pull their financial backing. I got bogged down in this thing. I had to pull out. It was pretty weird.
So I don't know what happened with the railroads like pre-Civil War. Obviously the North had the railroads and the South did not. They were mostly using like horse and buggy to transport to the Mississippi River basin and then ship their crops down south to Louisiana and to New Orleans specifically. So that was mostly the economic transport for the South, which is why when the North blockaded New Orleans, the port of New Orleans, I think it was your favorite president, Andrew Jackson, who was responsible for that. Was it Jackson or was it? No, it wasn't Jackson. It was this guy by the name. It was this. I remember now. It was this admiral by the name of Alfred Thayer Mahan who basically wrote the book on naval warfare in the 1800s that is still used and taught today in the Naval Academy. And one of his theories was that like he who controls the waters controls the world kind of deal. And you know what? He's not wrong. Still.
Well, that's why we had the space race.
Well, yeah,
whoever has the higher ground controls.
Well, it was basically he had a lot of theories on this, but anyway, I'm not going to talk about that. That's history class from another day. But essentially, the North had the railroads and the South did not. And after the Civil War, the freedmen, were basically like a lot of them escaped north, and if they didn't want to leave, when we talked about 1619 Project, they said, hey, we found this country, Liberia, you can go back if you want to, and they're like, nah, we're good, and they're like, great, go work on the railroads. And that happened to a lot of them, but also a lot of them did not take them up, and so then you had the influx of the Chinese, who were absolutely exploited in the 1860s and 70s to create Grant's Transcontinental Railroad.
I'm sorry to cut you off. Have you seen, it's a show on HBO Max called Warrior?
No.
It's about old 1800s, early 1800s San Francisco, and how the Chinese gangs and Chinese people interacted with the whites and the Irish and those people. Like the Irish owned the unions, and the Chinese were, obviously really exploited. And so the Chinese mafia was very prominent in taking care. It's kind of the way the Italian mafia started. It started by taking care of Italians. Like you paid them for the protection from outside sources, and then it became, you actually pay protection from us. So it's kind of the same type deal as these Chinese mafias started by protecting Chinese people from
actually being a racket, or
yeah, and then turned into big casinos and opium dens and that kind of thing, because they can make more money doing that. But it started with protecting Chinese people. Kind of interesting. I don't know. It's just a historical context. Obviously, there's a lot of great fighting. It's called Warrior.
That kind of show. That's what I'm talking about. I'll check it out. No, it sounds interesting. And like I said, I really like that history. I get, because these historical moments and these historical context of all these things that took place from the creation of the nation, the Civil War, Reconstruction, the Manifest Destiny era with Grant and the presidents that followed, up through basically to today. That's really why I get so annoyed at people like destroying or rewriting some of the history on any side, left or right. I don't care. Like, you don't change the historical context of the actions that happened in the past, because then it's harder to understand like how we got to where we are today. So that's all I was saying. I enjoy the history. We've kind of moved on really far from rights, and we wanted to drag us back to our thing. We're about an hour into the recording. Real quick, before we go any further, I do want to touch on... I just thought this was kind of funny. The New York Senate Majority Leader here in an interview says that, "I think if any more allegations come out, it would be time for Mr. Andrew Cuomo to resign." So the first three weren't enough for her. She needs the fourth allegation of sexual harassment and canoodling to come out before anything should happen. Come on, people. Like, really?
No, there's a lot of... Dude, so...
I think
one of the things that I've noticed is, like, people will go to the mat to defend their guy.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, the people that I've seen defending Biden, the people that I've seen defending Cuomo, the people that I've seen defending this bitch, what's her fucking name? Sorry for saying bitch, that's a derogatory, misogynist word. But actually, absolutely, see you next Tuesday, Kristen Sinema.
That's better?
No, it's not. But Kristen Sinema, have you seen her little curtsy that she did when she voted?
That was great. I laughed.
Dude, this bitch.
I laughed then because I saw it in the context of everyone freaking out.
Yeah, there are people absolutely defending her. And they're blaming Bernie. They're blaming Bernie for the 8 people that voted against the minimum wage. So they're saying, well, Bernie knew it was going to fail, and he forced the vote on the amendment, and therefore, if it never passes, it's Bernie's fault.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, it's like I told you before, like, people like Manchin aren't going to vote for it.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, but the thing is you have to do what essentially Bernie said he was going to do, and go to West Virginia, stand in front of their Capitol and say, hey, your senator is blocking your right to whatever. You know what I mean? You have to go and you have to get the people on board. And then the people will then call their senator. You have to use your bully pulpit to get things done. That's what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump basically bullied everyone into doing what he wanted. And if they didn't, he was like, we're going to primary you.
So,
and my name is awesome, and you suck, and we're going to primary you if you don't do what I want you to do. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and these asswipes won't do it. Fucking cowards.
I mean, of course those two won't. Biden hasn't had a solo press conference since he first got elected. So I mean, you're not going to see him. He's sitting over in the basement of the White House with a little blanket on, going like, "Oh, where's my tea? Is it time to go on TV yet? Can I take a question this time, please, Pelosi?"
Yeah. I don't know.
No, my problem with this isn't necessarily the allegations and everything else, because, like, you know, prove it in the court, right? And these are criminal charges. Prove it in the court. My problem is these three isn't enough, but if we have a fourth one, it's time for him to resign. Like, either it's enough at the first time, and it's bad enough with the allegation, right? These aren't convictions. These are allegations, and I think that, you know, everyone should have their day in court, including people I despise. But
I agree with that.
It's the allegation factor, and it's like, well, we got enough people jumping on the bandwagon that whatever. And I still think that this whole deal with him is to basically cover up the fact that his people were cooking the books on on COVID deaths. Like it's to save all of Mr. Cuomo's underlings when they got caught cooking the books. It's to distract. It's to take away from, hey, here's the actual real scandal. I mean, heck, Bill Clinton had a nice little scandal to detract from the 14,000 people he got killed in Kosovo.
Right.
So I mean, this is a proven tactic. This works. This is a great distraction to people from a real
of distractions,
problem.
Saw a new distraction today. A new outrage, which has to do with the Dr. Seuss canceling.
Yeah.
I think the CIA is doing this.
What?
I think it's all a cover up for you to look away. No, the new one is Pepe Le Pew and Speedy Gonzalez.
The next one is Pepe Le Pew and Speedy Gonzalez.
Now, I get Pepe Le Pew. That dude is a creepo. Like, his whole bit is a little Andrew Cuomo-y.
Oh God, what's the guy's name? Matt Lowry, you know?
Yeah, a little excessive.
A little bit of Kevin Spacey, Ed Bucky.
I'm just saying, I understand canceling Pepe Le Pew. I get it. Anyway, so speaking of canceling, I want to talk about Twitter and Facebook and that kind of stuff, because I had an interesting thought. What about, let me pull up my notes because I wrote it down. What about taking these platforms and basically treating social media, big tech, as public utilities? You regulate them, freedom of speech, etc. What about that?
Is it going to reduce the amount of like creepy ads? If I talk about like a coffee machine, am I still going to get the coffee machine ad on my?
I don't know how that works. I'm just saying, like, I just like, I don't know how it would work.
I'm mostly,
but I'm just saying,
joke,
like,
but
you, but basically, like, taking these companies and saying, you know what, these are public utilities. I mean, they're still privately owned businesses, like excuse me, like your electricity, like your telephones, like those kinds of things. Those are all water, but they're run by private businesses, but they are heavily regulated, right? So you can take something like Facebook and say, this is a public utility. It's, everybody needs it. This is part of the social discourse. Like you said, it is the platform. We're going to regulate it.
Well, it might work. And, because here's the biggest thing is obviously you've heard about ad nauseum, people talking about the Section 230 protections, right?
I can't hear you again.
It's
Speaking of public utilities.
It's the Section 230 protections, right? It's we're not responsible for what our users post because we are a platform and not publishers. The problem therein lies that they act like both publisher and platform. And so it's
yeah, I see what you're saying.
It's I don't know if you have to go quite as far as declaring them a public utility, but I mean that might be a solution. I mean my biggest difference is that like the rules they set for themselves sometimes, and this is and this will take us into our other discussion really when I mention it for Twitter, but like the rules that they set for themselves, they don't always follow for themselves, right? And that's how these legal suits and these cases get brought up against, say, Facebook, YouTube, Google, Twitter. It's when they set their own terms and standards, and then they're telling people like, hey, we're going to tell you when we ban you, but then they don't, and then they don't give a reason for why they ban you. They just block it or take it down or whatever else. And I got a visitor. They block it or take it down, and then you can't say his name, but I'm recording.
I know you're recording. I thought you said you don't do stuff live.
I'm recording, like we're not live.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Start over. Start your yelling over.
Yelling. I guess I am talking kind of loud. Totally lost my train of thought. Platforms, Section 230 protections, with these laws, they're not following their own terms and conditions, right? And that's where they get into legal trouble. I mean, that's why Facebook itself right now has 48 states that are coming after them for monopolistic practices and under antitrust laws. That's a class action lawsuit that's being brought by the states, 48 states in the United States, right? So that's definitely like a bipartisan issue. I don't know what it would look like if you put it under public utility. I don't necessarily disagree with it because I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I'd be interesting to see what that would look like. Like I said, I don't like a private business infringing on rights any more than I like the government infringing on rights. I mean, that story you sent me about the guys who like created a Photoshop getting arrested by the police, I think that's disgusting. I think what they did is disgusting, but I think them getting arrested by the cops for doing it is equally disgusting.
Right. Yeah.
Like that's not okay. That's not.
I'm trying to remember that story.
It was a story about the guys. There was a cop who had died, and they photoshopped themselves desecrating his grave or like defecating on his grave or something like that.
Yeah,
and so like,
yeah.
And the cops cooked up some story about like harassment for the wife or something like that of the dead guy, and like I get it. It's disgusting. It's a disgusting story all around. But come on, guys, you can't go after somebody like that. I don't think that's right. I don't think what that guy did was right either. Like, I mean, there should be, I don't know, but yeah. So I have a problem with that.
But they can do whatever they want. I mean, it's free speech.
So in regards to like Twitter, and this is going to take us into the next topic. Twitter has guidelines around like gendered speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the very point I was making to you, was that the rules that they set for themselves, in a certain sense, are very political, and it is inherently biased towards one side of the argument, and the discussion, I guess, is argument, a strong word, but whereas if a person who presents themselves as male or female is called by misgendered, again, the very definition of misgendering is different between the left
God,
and the right.
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I heard the very idea of misgender.
Yeah, the very definition of misgendering is different between the left and the right. Whereas someone on the left would say misgendering is calling someone a name or pronoun that they don't present as. And then on the right, it would be misgendering is calling someone different than what they were born as.
Different than what their sex is.
Yeah. So if you had for example, a male to female transition, and if they were to refer to this person as a he, that would be misgendering from the left, but not from a perspective of the conservative. It would be misgendering to refer to them as something that they would consider they are not.
Yeah.
And so inherently
gender is
within
a
the
social
rules,
construct.
inherently within the rules, it presents a bias.
Gender is a social construct. Gender is not the same as sex.
Okay.
So that's so when you say they're calling them what their sex is instead of what their gender is.
Mm-hmm.
So they are misgendering.
See, but that's a very leftist definition, and in fact, your whole stated framing of them being different is a leftist framing.
They are different. That's you.
The idea that gender
So,
is a social construct is a leftist framing.
So you would say that it's not? You would disagree with that?
I'm saying it is a leftist framing.
Yes or no? You would disagree that gender is a social construct? Are there characteristics of a man that are different from a woman?
Inherently, yes.
Okay. Do you think that a woman, could have manly characteristics and still think of themselves as a woman?
Sure.
Okay. Would you consider them cisgendered, or would you put them in a sort of a gender spectrum with infinite variables?
I would probably consider them a woman.
So cisgendered or different?
I refuse to use the term cisgendered because it's another one of those like, hey, we created this language to have this argument.
All language is created, so whether you like it or not, that's another social construct, language. Mm-hmm. So, okay. Do you think a girl who typically hangs out with boys, likes to do the same things as boys, fights, plays rough, grows up, likes to fight and wrestle and get into MMA, would you consider them gender normative?
Yeah. Just because you like things that a traditional boy would like doesn't make you a boy. And the same goes vice versa with boys to girls. If you like playing with Barbie, doesn't make you a girl.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So they're normative. That's normal. That's what you're saying.
Sure.
Okay. I'm gonna disagree because I think that if you are male and you exhibit regular man type of characteristics, that are typical for our society, then that is gender normative. If you are a male that likes some of the things that are typical for a woman in our society, I don't think that falls under the same spectrum. I think that's different. And because I think it is a spectrum. And there are variables. So if someone feels as that they are a woman, then I think they're allowed to be a woman, because at the end of the day, gender is a social construct anyway. What we view as manly and manly things are constructed from our society. Wearing pants. Used to, women couldn't even wear pants. But now it's a normal thing. That's a normal thing.
So
because we decided that it was okay.
If someone likes something that would be traditionally considered. Anytime a male would like something that would traditionally be considered feminine, he puts himself on some spectrum. Is that the argument you're making here?
No, I think, but I
because that's what you said, and then you tied it back into if you feel this way.
Okay, so hold on.
It's two different things.
I said it wrong. So let me clarify. Okay, so maybe I misspoke. If you view yourself as more of a boy, and you like boy things, but your sex is female, but you consider yourself a girl, but you only like boy things, I think there's a spectrum there. And it's not so clearly defined as man, woman, period, the end. You're this. Sorry.
I think
sorry
these
about
are
what you think.
Two completely different discussions. Because I think that what you like to do
but I'm just saying it's
is
not
completely different from how you feel about yourself.
I'm just saying it's not gender normative.
And
so because
things are things, and the things that you like to do are the things you like to do, and I don't really care what about that. Like, nothing about that makes any difference to me whatsoever in the grand whole of the discussion. If you want to go and play the video games and shoot the bows and arrows and shoot the guns and do the other boy thing, I don't care. That's not where this conversation is important. To me, this conversation is important where people get to the feeling of hating their body so much they have to either chemically or physically alter it. And
so you pity them.
I do. I feel bad. It's like, here's the thing. It's like having someone with anorexia come into the clinician's office, and the clinician looks at them and says, "Hey, look, you tell me you're so fat, and you know what? I agree with you. Let me give you these drugs that are going to help curb your appetite even more." And the way that, like, that's kind of how it comes off to me when the clinicians get involved with the. So
let me stop you right there, because that's unhealthy. So
it is unhealthy
because that's not. So it's a shitty analogy. It's disanalogous. Here's an analogy that you can use. Do you pity a woman who get a breast augmentation?
Yeah.
You pity them. Because they don't like their body, and so they had to mutilate it.
I feel bad that
you think a boob job is mutilation. What about a tattoo?
What about a tattoo?
Do you pity people
is
that
that
get
is that the
tattoos?
same thing as making yourself like lifetime subservient
I'm just wondering where you draw the line at mutilation.
A synthetic hormone. I don't have any tattoos.
I'm just curious. I'm just curious where you draw the line at mutilation. So, piercings. Do you pity people that get piercings?
Are we going to talk about this? Are we going to talk about the same thing?
I'm just saying, we were talking about body mutilation and how they don't feel good about themselves, so they have to go change something, and they deserve your pity.
So you're putting piercings and tattoos on the same level.
It's a mutilation, isn't it? It's changing your body permanently, isn't it?
No. Oh, I'm sorry. Tattoos can't be removed. Piercing, the holes don't close up over time if you don't stop using them.
You're frozen.
I'm sorry? What? It's permanent?
You were frozen. Yeah, it's permanent.
Permanent? Oh, so tattoos can't be removed? Piercings don't close up over time if you didn't you used to have a piercing right in your thing right here? Yeah?
I still got a scar from it.
Yeah, you got a scar? You got a hole there?
I have a permanent mark on my body from it.
Yeah, I don't pity you for that because you never hated yourself so much. Like it wasn't a thing where like you were just so disgusted with like how you felt about yourself that you got to the point where you're like, you know what, I really need this piercing right here. This is gonna make me feel better about my whole body.
So you think they hate themselves, or they just feel like they belong in a different body?
I feel like it's anecdotally shown through evidence that a lot of these people do hate their bodies. And they you know, you read through the message boards and everything else, and it's like they talk about the grotesque reminder that I'm not what I present as every time I look down. And to me, that is more analogous to, say, anorexia than what you were mentioning.
I disagree, because anorexia is a health issue.
It's a psychological issue. It is two things, and they are treated as two different things. And any time someone's treated for anorexia, it is a team effort. You have the medical diagnosis to treat the liver enzymes and the other things to make sure they're getting enough calories. There's a psychological component to it, and there's a dietitian. There's three different people, professionals, who treat a person diagnosed with anorexia.
Right, they do the same thing with transgender kids, people. Like to transition, you do all of those things as well.
How long does it take?
It can take anywhere. If you do the surgery, it's a minimum year. Sometimes a lot longer, because there are so many different evaluations and things that you have to go through legally to have surgery, to have transition surgery. You have to present for at least 1 year. You have to change the name. You have to present as the gender of choice, I guess. And then you go through more psychological evaluations, and then you have surgery. And they, you sent me that thing about 60% of people or whatever still commit suicide afterwards. That was a 2003 study that gave you the information, which is almost 20 years ago. But they have since enlisted more, a lot more post-op therapy, because it's stuff is ongoing. You know what I mean? Like it's ongoing. And the reason that I brought up all the examples is because everybody is different. The thing about transitioning, the thing about gender transition is it's very, very private, it's personal, and it's individualized process. And so, some people, they just want the boobs, and they, keep it moving. Some people, they don't even want to change anything. They just want to take the hormones. They don't want surgery or anything like that. They just want to, take hormones, and keep it moving. All of these things are fine. And so, you get, before you have any augmentation at all, you have to go through like years of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that if you have one family member, one parent that is supportive, your suicide rate drops by 95%.
Good.
Did you catch that?
I did.
Okay.
95%.
My screen is frozen again.
Yeah. Here's the thing. People, adults and consenting adults or whatever, you guys can do what you want to do. I don't think that it's a good situation where within 5 meetings, a teenager can receive puberty blockers before the age of 18. I don't think that's a good thing. I mean, adults are going to do what they want to do. That's whatever. None of my business. And like you said, it's very personal, and everyone can do what they want to do. I don't have a problem with
Are puberty blockers permanent?
Do they cause permanent damage? Yes. Clinically. Cause permanent damage. Puberty blocking in and of itself is not, but when taken for extended periods of time, absolutely causes permanent damage.
So
the best example for that
is
the best example for that is the famous UK individual by the name of Jazz Jennings, who took puberty blockers for, I think, since 14 to like 17 or 18, so over the period of like 3 or 4 years, and then went to fully transition, but was not able to because of the damage done to this individual's body.
So I'm reading this thing right here that says medical treatment may include administration of gonadotropin-releasing hormone agonists. These hormones can safely suppress puberty by blocking the production of principal sex hormones, estrogen, and testosterone. Fully reversible. This treatment gives young people time to achieve greater self-awareness of their gender identification, and if, when appropriate, our experts may administer cross-gender sex hormones. So,
maybe they got a bad batch. I don't know what this new chemical is.
I
don't know.
Well,
I just know what happened to this person.
These things they discovered these puberty blockers because there are lots of kids that get hit puberty too early.
Mm-hmm.
I know one right now, but 9 years old is developing boobs.
That's terrible.
And she's not mentally ready for it, and so her parents are putting her on puberty blockers, and so just to kind of stave that off until she's mentally prepared for that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like in that instance, yeah, that's good. That 9 years old is way too early.
Right, but I mean, but that's what I'm saying is, it's. I mean, and there, we can get into why that is happening more and more often, because it is happening more and more often.
Yes, it's definitely happening more often. Yay, hormones.
Yeah. So, it says I mean, for transitioning, but the standard medical treatment for gender dysphoria is transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is no specific order for the steps that you take or other requirements for behavioral health evaluation. The use of presenting full-time and one's chosen gender identity for 1 year before the genital procedures, unless there is a medical reason or otherwise it prevents meeting these requirements. There's no order for that, but they do have to happen. Behavioral evaluations, making sure that somebody's, emotionally prepared for the possibility of complications, being able to, you're going to have to go to the pharmacy. Like you said, they have to take drugs. My point is, and there are lots of other things that go along with this, is I want people to feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
And
at the end of the day, I do too. I really do. And that's the thing. Like, my whole point isn't to make people feel bad about themselves, right? It's that I don't believe it's a good long-term solution. And I know that you've got the studies and the sciences and all the data you can find on Google, because that's what they're going to show me, right? Like when I search specific things on Google and I work like if I search like, hey, transgender from adolescence on like Google versus Bing versus DuckDuckGo and other search engines, and the exact same phrasing, I'm getting different results. And so like, if I search detransition on Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, I'm getting different results. And the thing is that like the studies that I can find on other areas or on other search engines are very different. I was able to find one document here that says like it's got a count of different studies, and it says between 60 and 90%, and the studies performed, and it's got a list of them. Between 60 and 90% of trans kids no longer are trans by adulthood. But I couldn't find that data on Google. Right? That's not the message. That's not like, and the thing is, it's like all this data is all encompassing, and it really have to take a hard look at all of it. And that's
why it says that it gives you time.
Right.
To explore whatever.
Yeah. To explore it all.
I think that's kind of the point.
And I think it's more important that, and I wish that the science would go this way, and this is where it is, because I do draw the parallels between gender dysphoria, as the medical term, and anorexia. I do draw those comparisons, and you can disagree or agree with that or not. I know you disagree. But making someone feel comfortable in their body, because at the root of it, at the base of both of those things, is that they don't like something about their body. Something that is perfectly natural. Being at a healthy weight is seen essentially the same by the anorexic nervosa suffering individual as the gender dysphoria. Like, they don't like something about their body. And at the root of the problem, that's where I draw that connection. And I wish we could focus on that more so than external modifications. I wish the policies would go in that direction, drawing that link.
But that's part of it.
And it's like a small part.
The therapy is the biggest part of all of it. Is making people feel good about their bodies. It doesn't come off that way
when I'm reading through the research. It does not present that way reading through the research that I've seen. And that's my biggest gripe about it. Because
research
it
by
jumps
whom?
into... It jumps into like hormone replacement surgery, affirmation surgeries, not hormone replacement surgery, but like hormone replacements. The HRT, I guess, is what it's called, and then ultimately leading into SRS. And yes, it does have a lot of clinical portions in there. But say like in the United States, an individual can go to one informed consent clinic and sit through the consultation and receive hormone treatment. And in another area, it was like, I think it was in Sweden, there's been a lot of work done on in this field, is like there's 5 meetings, and like 2 of them are with the psychotherapist, and then 3 of them are with the clinician. And at that point, you can get whatever drugs, hormone replacement. So with 2 meetings with the therapist.
I mean, but I think that depends, right? It depends on the situation. So you can. That doesn't mean that's what always happens, because again, it's individualized.
Yes.
And if I've been presenting without ever having gone to therapy, and I want to take the next step, and I've been presenting for 2 years, and I want to now get on hormones, sure. Because again, it's individualized. It's, I think if somebody is having questions or whatever, they're not going to just bump them on hormones. That, like, I mean, you've got to give people some credit. Like, they're not just pumping kids full of fucking shit just because they're like, oh, well, at one time I felt like this. It's not how it works. But if somebody's been presenting for a long time, and then they have never been able to get to a doctor, and they've never gone to a therapist, or they've never been able to get the medicine, because all this shit is not covered. Like, you have to pay for it, right?
Did you know that in the last decade, I didn't copy and paste it over here. I know it's in one of these articles. I don't want to quote it incorrectly, but it was basically like in the UK in the last 10 years, it's been like 1,000% increase or something like that. Do you think that's more cultural or medical?
Okay, so I think
that's less than 18.
I think it's more accepted now than it has been ever. And I know that it upsets the TERFs, because they're losing their lesbians.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Go ahead. That's one of the articles I read from a clinician who deals with detransitioners talks about like the loss of structural and social support both in person and online because of these individuals who have detransitioned have basically been like completely ostracized from old friends and things like that. And in the case of the author of this article, she describes her clientele as, well, most of them come back to me as the butch lesbian types, and all my clients are were female to male that have detransitioned and basically now come out as lesbians, and so it's interesting you say that, because I had other information there. Anyway, please continue.
No, I'm just saying I think it's a lot more socially acceptable, and so if you feel a certain way or you've always felt a certain way, people are probably being more comfortable with who they are, which I think I see as a good thing. I think being comfortable with what you are or what you feel you are, I think that's like the That's probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why the numbers have jumped up, because it's more accepted, and it is it's not as taboo as it has been forever, you know. And so I think that's probably.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with people doing what they want and what they feel like. I really don't, and it's not where I'm trying to go with this. Like the concern that I have.
I lost you again.
I stopped talking. I was saying that the concern that I have is
frozen.
Oh.
The concern that you have
is the maintaining of high suicide rates and the comorbidities with depression and other symptoms that go along or sometimes go along with people suffering from mental distress. You know, there have been many studies. One article I pulled up that was actually like one of the transadvocate.com. But even this article mentions like overall mortality for sex reassigned persons is higher during follow-up at 95% than for controls of same-sex birth, and it's particularly death from suicide. Sex reassigned persons also had a increased risk for suicide attempts at 95%, and psychiatric inpatient care. So they've got suicide attempts and inpatient care as like the same designation, I guess, in this particular article. But it's like, I don't know, like you said, it's extremely personal to the individual, and I'm not trying to step on any of that. It just strikes me as disingenuous to look at these numbers and to look at the outcomes and still say that this is the number one way to treat people. That's kind of where I'm at.
I understand, but again, I think it's all personal and it's all individualized. So, you know, I'm reading this other study that goes from 1972 to 2017. You may have already looked at it, but the significant outcomes are suicide, death risk in trans people did not increase over time.
Is it from the Swedish guy from 2017?
It says Scandinavia.
Okay. Maybe. I might have seen that one. Anyway, please continue.
So, trends in suicide death risk in transgender people results from Amsterdam cohort of gender dysphoria study, is the name of the study. Suicide deaths occurred in every stage of transitioning, and suicide death risk is higher in trans people than in the general population. I do think that the further we progress as a society, that those numbers will go down. Mm-hmm. As it becomes more normalized, people aren't freaked out about it as much as they have been. I really do think those numbers get better. We'll see, obviously.
Yeah.
So out of 8,263 people, 49 suicides, and 41 were trans women, and 8 were trans men. And the age of first visit is 31.
Like the average age?
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
That's
yeah. Well, it was interesting reading through one of the message boards. I was reading through Transgender Pulse conversation, information on treatments and stuff. One of these posts here, just kind of seeing what the community had to say about it. And it was very interesting. And then, like you said, it's all extremely personal. It's all, hey, here's what worked for me. You know, the community itself seemed very supportive of each other. I'm 100% behind that. Everybody needs the love. On another topic, on another note, one of the things that I saw for parents with kids was actually like limiting.
You broke up again. Oh.
Yeah, no, our internet's terrible today. But one of the things I saw for like parents. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yes.
So while this affirming message board expresses a lot of care and concern for each other who are feeling the same way, one of the things that I saw for like parents was actually limiting like online time. Like if you had a child who was beginning to explore transgendered thoughts and gender dysphoria or whatever else, it was like, and you don't want this to happen. Like, love and support your kid, because if you shut them down, they'll leave you forever. Like, and you're not going to get them back. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. You know, like parents who shut out kids, like, well, that just seems a terrible idea in the first place. Mm-hmm. But it was another thing was it was like you can, like, they're teenagers, so they're going to like push back on you no matter what. But one of the more interesting points I saw was like limiting online time, and it was both from the an affirmation standpoint as well as despair standpoints, and it pointed to an article that was like the 4th teen suicide in an area where like these kids had all been communicating on message boards, and it was like it pointed to I'll pull it up, I can show you what it was. This was it, this one? Yeah, this one. Let's pull it up side by side. It was this story right here from San Diego, and it was basically how like limiting the online time can remove also negative influences.
Oh wow. Yeah. I think if you have a kid that's struggling with depression, removing or cutting back on online time greatly could help.
Yeah. Just any sort of issue like that. Yeah.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Like if a kid is
like,
struggling.
Yeah. It was like, yeah, when you cut off the online time, go outside and do something. Like do something together as a family. Like, and like, well, you should do that anyway, but
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go do things as a family. See, I mean, one of the things that we do and is really, really important to me is we do eat dinner as a family every single night. Like, and we leave the TV on just for background noise, but there is, no phones, no headphones. You need to be here.
Yep.
I have to have noise because I don't like the sound of my own chewing or other people's chewing. So
yeah, we turn on Pandora on our phones for that because.
But that's a must. That's a we have to do that. We're gonna do that, regardless of what night of the week it is. Mm-hmm. So, and we have dinner late. Like it's just what it is because we're gonna have dinner together. So
yeah.
Adjust your schedule accordingly. Have a snack.
Yeah. So, in any case, like I said, I don't come at this from like any sort of like hatred or disgust or whatever. It really is like, and the you mentioned pity because that's the word I used earlier, but it's not so much like for the individual, but it's for specifically treatments that I see presented as like the only options from the clinical studies that I've seen. I don't want anyone to hate themselves. I don't want anyone to hate their body.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's where I am. And it's not like, I don't look down on people. I don't, whatever. But I think, what my fear is that years from now, we're going to look back at the treatment options available, and it's going to be in the same vein as like how we look back at like the 1920s and 30s lobotomies. Everybody in the centers were getting the lobotomies because that was the cool new thing to do to patients in the asylums. That's my fear, and we're gonna look back on it like leeches. Like,
I don't think so, and because we've come a long way here from just killing these people outright. I mean, there have always throughout history been people that present differently. I mean, we all know what ancient Greece was like. Right. So I do think that processes will get better, and the therapies and the things of that line, because we're always going to grow. But I don't think that we're going to stop letting people
you think
present
we'll get to
how
the
they
point
want to
where
present.
like, hey, we've cloned a body for you, and and we've made all the cells in this body female, and so now you can truly have a female body. We're just going to move your brain over to this one. Wouldn't that be a day?
That'd be pretty cool.
Would be pretty cool. Let's get space travel first, because then no one's going to die either.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'm going to cut it here.
All right, buddy. That sounds good. All right. I'll see you next week.
All right, man. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching this episode of BroPartisan Hacks with Reese and Rob. We really, really appreciate you watching, tuning in. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to us. We're putting out content as often as we can. Share it with your friends. Get it out there. Get our names out there. Also, hit that bell, tap that bell right there so that you can get updated when we put out a new video. Rob and I are trying to pump these videos out as often as we can. However, we both have day jobs, we have families, so our schedules have to line up so that we can make a new video. Speaking of our day jobs, our opinions and views expressed are our own and in no way represent those of our respective employers. Thank you. Thanks again for watching.